I'm recording this video from my cell phone at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. I am on my way to New York City, where, as we have announced earlier, I will be participating at the annual gala dinner of the New York Young Republican Club. I will share more about that later, but that is not the point of this video. The point of this video is to share with you an open letter that we at Lex Libertas have penned for the intention of the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Ronald Lamola. Now, the brief context, of course, is the G20 and the South African government's claim that the G20 was a major success because it was not a failure. In other words, there was no spectacular failure or no embarrassments at the event, as a result of which it should be described as a big victory for the South African government. After the conclusion of the G20, we know that the United States have said that they intend not to invite South Africa to participate in the G20 next year in Miami. And there was a very strong worded statement by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, which was responded to by what you might call an open letter by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola. And so this letter by Lex Libertas is a response, an open letter addressed to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation to deal with some of the issues that was pointed out in his letter. I'm going to share that with you. Open letter to Minister Ronald Lamola. Dear Minister Lamola, your recent response to the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in which you rejected concerns about minority persecution in South Africa, highlights a serious and recurring problem in the discourse regarding South Africa. Instead of engaging with substantive issues affecting the various communities within the country, the South African government routinely dismisses legitimate warnings as misinformation or as politically motivated attacks. This pattern has become predictable, but no less damaging. You assert that there is no evidence of targeted mistreatment, citing certain statistics as proof. I am sure you would agree that it is possible to make virtually any political point through a selective use of statistics. This is because no single data set can measure the full picture of systemic failures. Policy-driven discrimination, collapsing state capacity, or the lived experience of vulnerable communities. Crime figures alone do not capture the impact of racialized legislation, ideological hostility, institutional decay, or years of state neglect in rural and community and minority communities. To suggest that these issues do not exist is not only inaccurate, it is responsible. The undeniable truth remains that South Africa is not confronted with one problem. We face multiple interconnected crises. These include, but are not limited to, the consequences of a destructive economic policy, the collapse of essential state functions, violent crime with regard to which the South African government has lost control, widespread corruption that continues to go unpunished, and the growing vulnerability of targeted minority communities. These are not separate incidents coincidentally occurring at the same time. Together, they expose a political order that is faltering at its foundations, a reality that international partners are increasingly acknowledging. It is sad to witness a recurring pattern among members of the South African ruling elite and a selection of media outlets and commentators ideologically aligned with its objectives, in which these valid concerns are repeatedly and aggressively swept under the carpet with the mere claim that there is no white genocide in South Africa, as if the existence of genocide is the only factor by which one may conclude whether a crisis exists. It is in this context that government leaders, including yourself, have developed the unfortunate habit of accusing critics of being unpatriotic or attacking the country. But, Minister, our position is shaped by lessons drawn directly from the ANC's own history. The ANC did not merely criticize the white minority government. It called for sanctions, boycotts, international pressure, and civil disobedience, all in the name of what it believed was justice. What civil society voices in South Africa are doing today is modest by comparison. If the ANC could justify such campaigns in the past, it should not be surprising that citizens today raise their voices when constitutional rights, basic freedoms, community safety, and so forth are under threat. The underlying issue here is that criticisms of the ideology of the ruling elite are presented as a lack of patriotism, when the truth of the matter is that it is that very ideology that has caused so much destruction in this beautiful country. Minister Lamola, you need to understand that South Africa is moving towards a similar moment of reckoning. The current trajectory is by no means sustainable. If the government remains unwilling to address these crises honestly, the scale and intensity of campaigns, both inside the country and internationally, will only increase. In the immediate term, several practical interventions are urgently required. These include prioritizing farm murders by scrapping unnecessary regulatory barriers that prevent community-based and private security initiatives from doing what they do best. Guaranteeing the protection of property rights unequivocally by abandoning expropriation without compensation and promoting freedom in the market in a tangible way. Scrapping destructive policies such as BEE, cadre deployment, and other racially divisive frameworks that fail to achieve what they proclaim to champion, while weakening institutions and driving away investment. Restoring the rule of law, especially with regard to rural and marginalized communities that have been reduced to second-class citizens by the justice system. And prosecuting government leaders, their friends and family members involved with corruption. With all of that said, it should be stressed that even these interventions, vital as they are, will not resolve the root problem. This is because these interventions would, at best, serve to address the symptoms of a deeper rooted crisis. The central issue is structural. South Africa's highly centralized political model concentrates excessive power in a national government that is neither capable nor accountable enough to wield it. This has been true under the ANC, it was true under the National Party, and it was true under the British colonial administration. Even though the current South African dispensation is frequently presented as the antithesis of the National Party's white minority government, the similarities remain striking. A centralized state ruling over a vast and diverse society on a racial basis. This approach is destined for periodic failure. On top of this, our reality is worsened by the fact that the ruling elite maintains its belief that the destructive ideological combination of race, nationalism, and socialism will improve prosperity, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. What South Africa truly needs is meaningful decentralization and genuine self-governance for its communities. This is not ideological, it's practical. One might go farther and say that it is anti-ideological because it recognizes that self-governance is as natural as human nature itself. unlike the abstract theories currently imposed in the name of prosperity and equality. Around the world, diverse societies characterized by deep friction have stabilized themselves through federal, cantonal, and other community-based models that disperse power, enhance accountability, and allow people to manage their own affairs. To contribute constructively to this debate, Lex Libertas will soon release a series of detailed public reports documenting the extent to which minority communities are being marginalized, targeted, and exposed to systemic vulnerability. These reports will include trend data, case studies, legal analysis, community testimonies, and a register of public statements by public officials. This series will be followed by a set of practical steps that could be taken toward a more viable political order for the various nations that inhabit South Africa. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss these matters with you directly. South Africa cannot move forward through denial. It requires courage, accountability, and structural reform. Lex Libertas stands ready to engage openly, respectfully, and based on evidence. Yours sincerely.